I had just stepped out of the office building after a long day of meetings. It was one of those days where I could feel my shoulders tense with all the pressure. I needed fresh air, so I took the long way home. As I walked down the busy street, I noticed him sitting there on the sidewalk. The man looked to be in his mid-40s, his clothes ragged, his face worn with exhaustion. He was holding up a cardboard sign, the words barely legible. It simply said, "Please help, anything helps." People passed by without a second glance, too busy with their own lives to stop. Some even avoided eye contact, walking as if he wasn't there. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. But then, I heard a sharp voice cut through the air. "Get up, you're just lazy, begging for money like that. Pathetic." I turned, and that's when I saw him, a man in a crisp suit, his shoes shining like mirrors. His face was cold and stern, and he had a look of disgust as he glared down at the homeless man. The homeless man didn't respond, his head hanging low, probably too tired to argue. "You should be ashamed of yourself," the man in the suit yelled, his face twisted with anger. "Get a job, stop begging." Without warning, he raised his hand and slapped the homeless man across the face. The sound of the slap echoed down the street. People stopped, but no one intervened. I froze. Something about the way he treated the man made my heart race. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. But before I could react, the suited man walked off, his arrogance leaving behind a heavy silence. I walked closer to the homeless man, my heart aching for him. He looked up at me, his eyes tired but kind. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. He didn't answer, but I saw the slight nod of his head. I reached into my purse and handed him the few dollars I had left. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reached his eyes. I felt guilty for only offering him a little, but it was all I had at the moment. Still, I walked away, with a knot in my stomach. I had seen enough cruelty for the day. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the end of the story. I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going to happen because of that slap. Something that would change everything. It had been a few days since that encounter. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I passed the spot where the homeless man had sat, I would look around, hoping to see him again, but there was no sign of him. I tried to move on, focusing on my work. But the whole situation kept nagging at me. The slap, the anger, it just didn't sit right with me. I couldn't understand why someone would treat another human being like that. And then one morning, as I walked into my office building, something caught my eye. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but then I saw him again, the same man in the suit, the one who had slapped the homeless man. He was standing near the elevator, talking to a group of people, his posture so confident and proud, like he owned the place. I couldn't believe it. This man, this arrogant, cruel person, was someone I had seen often in the news. He was a well-known billionaire, a self-made entrepreneur. I knew his company, of course. Everyone did. His name was Alex Carter, and he was infamous for his cutthroat business dealings. But seeing him here in the lobby of my office building, standing tall, so polished, it felt surreal. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, trying my best not to make it obvious that I had noticed him. But as luck would have it, he stepped in right behind me. I couldn't help myself. "You're Alex Carter, aren't you?" I asked, my voice shaking just a little. He looked at me, his face cold but not entirely surprised. "Yes, that's me." I paused, my thoughts racing. I was still upset about what I had seen days ago. I didn't know if I should say anything, but I couldn't keep it inside. "You slapped that man on the street, didn't you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. His expression didn't change. He didn't seem embarrassed or regretful. "Yes, I did," he said, his tone dismissive. "Some people just need a wake-up call. I worked hard for everything I have. Why should I give anything to people like that?" I felt my chest tighten. His words were so cold, so uncaring. But then something strange happened. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, they suddenly opened again. A man stepped in, wearing a simple black jacket and jeans. He looked normal, nothing special about him at first glance, but as he stepped closer, I noticed something about his eyes. He looked familiar. The man's gaze shifted toward Alex, and for the briefest moment, I saw something in his eyes, recognition, maybe even fear. And then he turned to face me. "I'm sorry," the man said softly, as if apologizing for the awkwardness in the room. But before I could respond, Alex spoke up. "You know him?" Alex's voice was sharp, almost a little defensive. But the man in the black jacket didn't flinch. The man looked at Alex for a moment before replying, "I do. But I don't think you remember me." The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. There was something in the way he said it, a quiet confidence, like he knew something Alex didn't. And for the first time since I'd met Alex Carter, I saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. Guilt. But before I could ask more, the elevator doors closed, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I had no idea what was going on, but I felt the air change. Something was about to happen. Something that would turn everything upside down. The next few days were a blur of work and routine, but the encounter in the elevator stayed with me. I couldn't stop thinking about the man in the black jacket. Who was he? And why had he looked at Alex with such recognition? Maybe even pity. I couldn't let it go. There was something there. Something bigger than just the slap. I knew it. I could feel it. I spent the weekend digging into Alex Carter's life, trying to find any connection, any hint that could explain the strange tension between him and the man in the elevator. I looked up his company, his history, and even searched through social media for any clues. And then I found it. A few years ago, Alex had been involved in a charity event, something that was praised by the public for its generosity. But then, something happened. There was a scandal. A report came out that some of the funds for the charity had mysteriously disappeared. The scandal died down quickly, swept under the rug, but it didn't seem like the whole story had been told. That's when I found the name, Mark Walters. Mark Walters was listed in the scandal as a key figure in the charity's operations, but he had been completely erased from any records after the incident. He wasn't mentioned anywhere, not even in the most recent news. It seemed like he had vanished into thin air. But the man in the black jacket looked exactly like the photo of Mark Walters that I found online. The same face, the same eyes, the same kind of quiet intensity. I knew I had to find him, had to talk to him. I needed to know the truth. The following week, I decided to take a risk. I went back to the same street, the one where I had seen the homeless man before. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I had this feeling in my gut that I would find something, or someone, important. And sure enough, there he was, Mark Walters, sitting on the same corner, just like he had been before. His clothes were still worn, his face still tired, but there was something different about him now. He looked at me with recognition when I approached him. "I thought I might see you again," he said softly. "You were the woman in the suit, weren't you?" I nodded, sitting down beside him on the cold sidewalk. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to say, but I couldn't stop myself. "Are you Mark Walters?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at me for a long moment, studying my face. Then finally he nodded. "I am. But it's not who I am now that matters. It's who I was before that's important." I swallowed, trying to steady my breath. "What happened? Why are you out here? What happened with Alex Carter?" He looked away, his eyes distant as if remembering something painful. "I used to work for him. I was his business partner, his right-hand man. We built everything together, but then the scandal happened, and Alex, he turned on me. He accused me of taking the charity funds, even though I had nothing to do with it. He wiped my name from everything, made sure no one would remember me." Tears welled up in my eyes as I listened. "But why? Why would he do that to you?" Mark sighed, his voice full of regret. "Because he's afraid. He's afraid that people will find out the truth. He knew I was the one who could bring him down if I spoke out. So he made me disappear. I've been living on the streets ever since, trying to stay out of the spotlight. But sometimes, the truth has a way of coming out." I felt a lump form in my throat. This man, this kind, gentle man, had been dragged through the mud by someone who had everything. And yet, here he was, still alive, still fighting to survive. "You've been through so much," I whispered, my heart breaking for him. "But why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you fight back?" He looked at me with a sad smile. "I didn't have the power. When you have nothing, your voice is just a whisper. But now I'm not alone. I don't have to do this on my own anymore." Just then, a car pulled up beside us. I turned, my heart skipping a beat as I saw a familiar face. It was Alex Carter. His eyes locked with mine, and I could see the fear flicker behind his cold facade. Mark stood up, his voice steady. It's over, Alex. I'm not hiding anymore. Alex's face went pale, and for the first time, I saw the arrogant billionaire look vulnerable. You should have stayed quiet, he muttered. You don't know what you're doing. But Mark didn't back down. He stepped forward, facing Alex with strength I hadn't expected. I know exactly what I'm doing, Mark said quietly. I'm finally telling the truth. The air between Alex and Mark was thick with tension. For a moment, it felt like the entire world had paused. Alex, who had built his empire with ruthless ambition, was standing there, facing the one man who could bring it all crashing down. And Mark, who had lived for years in the shadows, was finally ready to step into the light. I didn't know what to expect next, but my heart raced, torn between wanting to stay and knowing this moment could change everything. I could see the way Alex was trying to control his fear, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. You think you're gonna ruin me? Alex spat, his voice venomous. You think anyone will believe you after all these years? You're nothing. Mark didn't flinch. His voice was calm, steady. I don't need anyone to believe me. The truth is enough. There was a long silence, and for a moment, I thought Alex might walk away. But instead, he took a step forward, his eyes cold with fury. You don't know what you're messing with, Mark. You're just a nobody. I felt the heat rise in my chest. I couldn't stand hearing him talk to Mark like that, as if he was some insignificant part of his past. I had seen how Alex treated people, like they were disposable, and this was just another example of his arrogance. Before I could stop myself, I stepped forward. You're wrong, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. Mark isn't a nobody, and you're the one who's been hiding the truth. Alex's gaze snapped to me, his eyes narrowing. He hadn't expected anyone to challenge him. And who are you? Another bleeding heart trying to save the world? I didn't back down. I'm someone who believes that no one deserves to be treated the way you've treated Mark. You humiliated him, took everything from him, and now you're trying to keep him quiet because you're scared of what he knows. Alex's face turned a shade of red, his jaw tightening. He took another step forward, but this time, Mark stepped in front of me, his voice low and firm. Don't bother, Alex. It's over. You're not getting away with it anymore. I could see the panic in Alex's eyes. He was trying to regain control, but the truth was slipping away from him. I could sense the weight of everything he had done bearing down on him, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Not for what he had done, but for the man he had become, lost in his own lies and fears. Alex turned sharply, his pride wounded. This isn't over, he muttered before turning and walking away, leaving us standing there in the quiet aftermath of his departure. Mark and I watched him go. There was no victory dance, no triumphant speech, just the quiet weight of everything that had happened. Mark's shoulders slumped, and for the first time I saw a crack in his tough exterior. I didn't want it to end like this, he said quietly. But sometimes people don't leave you with a choice. I nodded, understanding more than I could express. You did what you had to do. There was a long pause before Mark turned to me, his face softened by gratitude. Thank you for believing me, he said, his voice full of emotion. I never thought anyone would. My heart swelled at his words. You deserve to be heard, Mark. I'm glad I could be part of it. But as I stood there with him, something inside me shifted. I knew that the story wasn't over. Not for Mark, and not for Alex. The truth had been set free, but there would be consequences. And those consequences would change everything. The days after that confrontation felt like a blur. Mark's story began to spread, slowly at first, and then like wildfire. The media picked it up, digging into the details of the charity scandal and Alex's role in it. People who had once praised him now turned on him, questioning everything he had ever done. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines, a mixture of pride and disbelief in my chest. It was strange seeing someone's empire crumble like that, even if it was deserved. Mark's voice had finally been heard, and the truth had shattered Alex's carefully constructed facade. But I didn't realize how deep the effects would run. One morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? I said cautiously. Is this the woman who helped Mark Walters? The voice on the other end was shaky, nervous. Yes, this is her, I replied, sitting up straighter in my chair. Who is this? There was a long pause before the voice spoke again. barely above a whisper. I'm an employee of Alex Carter's company. I've seen what he's been doing behind the scenes, and I can't stay silent anymore. There are others like me, people who know what he's done, who've watched him destroy lives for his own gain. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Are you saying? Yes, the voice interrupted. I have evidence, proof of the things he's done, and I'm willing to share it. But I need your help. We can't do this alone, there's too much at stake. My heart raced. This was bigger than just Mark now. This was a full-scale revelation, a chance to expose Alex for all of his wrongdoings, to bring him to justice once and for all. I'm listening, I said, my voice steady, though my pulse was pounding in my ears. The conversation that followed changed everything. This wasn't just a personal vendetta anymore. It was a fight for accountability, for truth. People were coming forward, one by one, each with a piece of the puzzle that Alex had tried so hard to keep hidden. But even as I felt the excitement of finally taking down a man who had ruined so many lives, a part of me hesitated. I knew what was at risk. Alex wouldn't go down without a fight. And in the world he had created, with all his money and influence, I feared what he might do to protect himself. Days passed, and the pressure mounted. I met with lawyers, with reporters, with people who had once worked for Alex, each one of them offering more pieces to the puzzle. The evidence was mounting, but so was the danger. There were whispers that Alex was already planning his next move, trying to silence anyone who threatened his empire. And then, one evening, I received another call. This time it was Mark. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this, he said, his voice strained. I've tried to stay in the background, but it feels like the world is closing in. I'm scared, but I won't stop. I can't. Not now. I could hear the fear in his voice, but also the strength. Mark wasn't backing down, not after everything he had been through. He had found his voice, and he wasn't going to let it be taken from him again. You don't have to do this alone, I told him, my voice firm. We're all in this together now. There was silence on the other end before he spoke again, his voice softer this time. Thank you, for everything. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about exposing Alex Carter, it was about standing up for the truth, for the people who had been crushed under his greed. It was about giving Mark his life back, and so much more than that. The world had changed in ways I hadn't expected. The floodgates had opened, and the truth about Alex Carter was no longer just a whispered rumor, it was everywhere. News outlets, social media, even former colleagues of Alex's, everyone seemed to have a piece of the puzzle, and the pieces were all pointing in the same direction. But as the pressure on Alex grew, so did his desperation. His once steady empire was starting to crack, and I could feel the fear in every word he spoke. People who had once supported him were now turning their backs, and it was only a matter of time before the walls came crashing down. Mark and I stayed in close contact, our conversations filled with a mix of hope and anxiety. The closer we got to the truth, the more I could sense the danger rising. Alex wasn't the kind of man who would let this go quietly. He had spent years building his fortune, and now he had everything to lose. I was at my office one afternoon when I received an unexpected email. A message from an unknown sender. It contained a file labeled simply, "The Final Proof." I clicked open the file, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside were emails, contracts, and documents. Everything I needed to put the final nail in Alex's coffin. Evidence of his involvement in a range of illegal activities. Money laundering, exploitation of workers, and the corruption that had fueled his rise to power. But then I noticed something else, something chilling. There were photos too. Photos of Mark, of us, me, standing on that same street corner with Mark. Someone had been watching us, following our every move. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. This wasn't just about exposing Alex anymore. It was personal. I quickly forwarded the file to Mark and the legal team we had been working with, knowing they would be able to use it. But as I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Alex wasn't the kind of man to be taken down without a fight, and I had a sickening feeling that he was going to do whatever it took to protect his empire. Later that night, I received a call from Mark. His voice was strained, more urgent than I had ever heard it. "I think they've found me," he said quietly. "I saw someone I recognize. They've been following me, watching my every move. My heart skipped a beat. Mark, what do you mean? Who? It doesn't matter. What matters is that I can't stay in the open anymore. I have to leave, now. I felt a pang of panic. No. Don't do anything rash. We're so close, Mark. We have everything we need to take him down. Please, just wait. But Mark didn't hesitate. I can't wait any longer. I won't let them hurt anyone else. I have to disappear. And with that, he hung up. I tried calling him back, but the line went dead. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I couldn't let this happen. Not now, not after everything we had been through. The next few hours were a blur. I contacted the team, the reporters, anyone who could help track Mark down to make sure he was safe. But every minute felt like an eternity, and the fear gnawed at me. I had seen the power that Alex held, and I knew what kind of man he was. He wouldn't hesitate to hurt Mark if he thought it meant saving himself. Just as I was about to give up hope, I received a message from Mark. It was simple. I'm safe for now. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. I knew that the battle wasn't over. Alex was still out there, and he would stop at nothing to protect his secrets. But now, we had him cornered. The final blow was coming, and there was no turning back. The days after Mark's disappearance were filled with tension. Though he was safe for now, we all knew that it was only a matter of time before Alex's people found him again. He had made his escape, but the stakes were higher than ever. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much risk we were all taking. This wasn't just about exposing Alex anymore, it was about surviving. Despite the danger, we couldn't back down. Mark had been through too much, and he deserved justice. I couldn't let Alex get away with it all. But that night, as I sat at my apartment, trying to come up with a plan, I received a message that shook me to my core. It was from an anonymous source. The words clear and chilling. We know where you are. You're running out of time. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I had been careful, trying to stay off the radar, but clearly, someone had been watching me too. It was Alex's warning, his way of telling me that there was no way out. I immediately contacted Mark, but there was no answer. I felt the panic rise again. Was he still safe? Was Alex closing in? And then, without warning, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I picked it up anyway, hoping it was Mark. Hello? I said, my voice shaky. A voice I didn't expect answered, one I hadn't heard in days. It was Alex. I've been thinking about this whole thing. Alex's voice was calm, unsettling. I know what you're trying to do, and you won't succeed. You can't take me down. I've built my life from the ground up, and I'll protect it, at any cost. I could hear the threat in his words, the coldness that ran deep beneath his arrogance. What do you want, Alex? His laugh echoed through the phone, mocking. I want you to understand something, Miss Carter. You're not as clever as you think. You're just another pawn in a game you don't understand. And when this is over, I'll make sure you and your precious friend disappear. I felt my blood run cold. He was threatening me. He was threatening Mark. I won't stop, I said, my voice steady, despite the fear rising in my chest. You'll face justice for what you've done. It's over for you. There was a long pause before he responded, the silence almost suffocating. We'll see about that. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. The reality was settling in. I couldn't do this alone. I needed Mark. He was the key to ending this, to bringing Alex to justice. I knew where he was. I just had to get to him before Alex's men did. I managed to track Mark down with the help of the legal team and a few contacts we had in the media. He was holed up in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, staying hidden and waiting for the storm to pass. But I couldn't let that happen. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about taking action. About finally bringing Alex to justice. I rushed to the apartment, my heart racing. As I approached the building, I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. This was the moment. When I knocked on the door, Mark opened it almost immediately. He looked tired, worn, but there was fire in his eyes. I thought I told you to stay safe, I said, my voice low. I couldn't just hide, he replied. We're so close, aren't we? I nodded. It's now or never. Alex is coming for both of us, but we can't let him win. Mark's face hardened with determination. I've already lost everything once. I won't let him take more. I knew then that we had to finish this. Together, we made our way to the heart of the storm. The final showdown, the moment when Alex's empire would either collapse or we would be silenced forever. We made our way through the dark streets, each step heavy with the weight of what was to come. Mark and I were the only ones who truly knew the depth of Alex's wrongdoings, what he had done to so many people. Now, it was time to make sure the truth was exposed once and for all. I couldn't stop thinking about the phone call, the chilling words Alex had spoken to me. I knew he wouldn't stop until he'd destroyed us both. But I also knew that we couldn't let that happen. We had the evidence, we had the support, and we had the truth on our side. We arrived at the courthouse just before dawn, the city still half asleep. There was a sense of finality in the air, like everything had been building up to this moment. I could hear the murmur of reporters in the distance, gathering outside, but we weren't there yet. The real battle would take place inside the walls of that building. Mark squeezed my hand, his grip firm, but I could see the nerves in his eyes. He had every right to be nervous. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about everyone Alex had hurt, the employees, the families, the lives he had destroyed for his own gain. "We've come this far, Mark," I said, my voice low but steady. "We've got this." He nodded, though I could see the storm of emotions in his eyes. "I just want it to end. I want him to pay." The doors of the courthouse opened and we stepped inside, where a sea of reporters and photographers awaited us. But it wasn't the press that made my heart race. It was the cold, calculated expression on Alex's face as he stood at the front of the room, his legal team at his side. He looked confident, almost smug, like he still believed he could win. He caught my eye as we entered, and I saw the flash of recognition. There was no kindness in his gaze, only hatred, a deep-seated anger that had fueled his every decision. "Miss Carter?" he sneered, still trying to play the hero. I met his gaze, refusing to look away. "This is over, Alex. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." The room fell silent. His team shifted uncomfortably, and for the first time I saw doubt in Alex's eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. This was the moment when everything changed. The courtroom wasn't just a place for legal arguments anymore. It was a place where the truth would finally come to light. As the trial unfolded, piece by piece, the damning evidence came out. Documents, photos, testimonies from former employees who had never dared speak out before. Alex's lies were being stripped away, and with each revelation, his empire seemed to crumble more and more. I watched as he tried to maintain his composure, his eyes flickering with panic. The man who had once controlled everything was now losing his grip, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The walls were closing in. But it wasn't just the evidence that was bringing him down. It was the people he had hurt, the faces of those who had trusted him, the voices of those he had silenced for so long. With every person who stood up to tell their story, Alex's power seemed to fade a little more. I glanced at Mark, sitting beside me, his expression a mixture of relief and disbelief. He had fought so long to bring this moment to life, and now it was happening. Then came the final blow. The testimony from a former colleague of Alex's who had worked with him for years, the one person who had been keeping track of everything Alex had done. He didn't hesitate. He told the truth, and in that moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Alex was done. The judge didn't waste any time. The ruling was swift, almost brutal in its clarity. Alex Carter was guilty. He would face the consequences of his actions, the lives he had ruined, the lies he had told. All of it was now exposed for the world to see. As the gavel came down, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. There was no joy in seeing Alex fall, only the quiet knowledge that justice had been done. He had been given every chance to change, to make things right, but he had chosen greed, power, and cruelty instead. Mark stood up beside me, his face pale but resolute. "It's over," he whispered. I nodded, my own voice thick with emotion. "Yeah, it's over," and for the first time in years, I saw Mark smile. Not a smile of triumph or vengeance, but a smile of peace, of knowing that he had finally found freedom. Freedom from the past that had haunted him. Freedom from the man who had taken everything from him. We walked out of the courthouse together, our steps lighter, the weight of everything we had been through finally beginning to lift. Alex was finished, and though his empire had crumbled, the truth had prevailed. For Mark, for the people he had fought for, and for everyone who had suffered under Alex's cruelty, it was the end of a long, painful chapter, and the beginning of something new. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story and found it meaningful. If you did, please like, comment, and share to help spread the word. It really means a lot. And if you're not subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Your support makes all the difference and helps me create more stories for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below. See you in the next one.